From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. First, the headlines. U.S. experts say prioritize peace and humanitarian aid for Ukraine over weapons. African countries criticize treatment of Africans fleeing Ukraine. Afghanistan's children repair roads destroyed by bombs for food. After 200 failed attempts, U.S. House passes bill to make lynching a federal hate crime. President Biden announces new COVID test and treatment initiative. Our top story tonight. As U.S. Congress considers spending $6.4 billion or more, and President Joe Biden commits military aid to Ukraine, some U.S. experts on Tuesday suggested prioritizing diplomacy and humanitarian assistance over military aid. William D. Hartung, a senior research fellow at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, urged U.S. lawmakers not to cause more global conflict. He and other experts said diplomacy, instead of a military response, will end the violence, help suffering Ukrainians, and promote long-term peace. Their arguments came as Russia held nuclear weapon drills and continued to attack Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities. Although a plan for donated fighter jets from European nations fell apart this week, various countries have sent or pledged to send arms and other military aid to Ukrainians. Referencing Moscow's recent demands that preceded the invasion last week, including the exclusion of Ukraine from NATO, Professor Noam Chomsky said that there is good reason to believe that this tragedy could have been avoided until the last minute. Nigeria's government and the African Union on Monday condemned reports that Africans had been mistreated and, in some cases, denied the right to cross Ukraine's borders to safety. Bulgarian Prime Minister Kirill Petkov told journalists earlier this week that Ukrainian refugees are intelligent and educated people. He added previous waves of refugees were people we were not sure about their identity, people with unclear pasts who could have even been terrorists. Gabon's ambassador to the UN, Baudelaire Nadong Ella, called the situation unacceptable. African Union leaders, reacting to reports of mistreatment of Africans caught up in the Ukraine conflict, said such conduct would be shockingly racist. Ukraine called early Wednesday for equal opportunities for Africans seeking to evacuate from the country. Ukraine's army includes neo-Nazi units, according to many media reports.
South Africa endorses the statement issued by the African Union Commission expressing concern that the treatment given to African nationals and people of African descent at the borders of Ukraine, some of whom are not allowed to cross and move to safety. We urge European countries to take steps to resolve this situation, as all people have a right to cross international borders during times of conflict.
The Arab and Middle Eastern Journalists Association criticized U.S. media reporters' use of the term civilized to describe Ukraine and its people fleeing violence as those who don't look like refugees. The organization said calling these new refugees and internally displaced persons as civilized is a far cry from the treatment of refugees of other conflicts in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. In a recent example, CBS News correspondent Charlie D'Agata, reporting from Kyiv, said this isn't a place like Iraq or Afghanistan that had seen conflict raging for decades. D'Agata called the Ukrainian capital a relatively civilized, relatively European city. The Washington Post reports that as the statement went viral, D'Agata issued an apology Saturday, calling it a poor choice of words. Israeli soldiers attacked worshippers gathered to celebrate a Muslim holiday on Monday at AL-AQSA Mosque in Jerusalem. 14 Palestinians were wounded, including a child, and 4 were taken to a hospital for treatment, the Palestinian Crescent said. Israeli soldiers also detained at least 20 Palestinians. Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest site in Islam and the place from which Muslims believe Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. Palestinians were observing the Islamic festival of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj when the attack happened. Videos shared on social media showed Israeli forces throwing tear gas and stun grenades into the crowd, which included many children and infants, sparking panic. Asphalt roads in Afghanistan destroyed by explosions due to decades of conflict are being repaired by children. Afghan boys and girls between the ages of 7 and 15 fill pits created by mines and bombings with soil and gravel they collect from the roadside. These children work from sun up to sundown in difficult conditions to contribute to the livelihood of their families. Hundreds of children who work on the main road stretching from the capital Kabul to Ghazni, Zabul, Kandahar, Helmand, Nimruz, Farah, and Herat provinces request help from drivers. Some drivers give money to the children, while others share their food with them. According to the London-based charity Save the Children, there are roughly 1 million child workers across Afghanistan. Authorities in Istanbul, Turkey, closed an Uyghur elementary school allegedly at the request of the Chinese government. Chinese officials worried students were receiving anti-China instruction there, the school's principal and parents of students said. The Hira Uyghur Elementary School's doors were closed February 21st, and more than 300 students were barred from entering. The school was opened in 2015 by Uyghurs from western China's Xinjiang region with permission from the Istanbul Provincial Directorate of National Education. It is located in a district of Istanbul where many Uyghurs have settled, some fleeing widespread persecution in Xinjiang. It taught students Uyghur, English, and Turkish languages, other subjects, and vocational skills. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC, and the Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC, on Tuesday welcomed the UN Security Council's classification of Yemen's Houthi rebel group as terrorists. The Security Council also extended an arms embargo to all the Houthi members. The OIC said it hopes the UN's decision will contribute to ending the actions of the Houthis and their supporters. It will limit the threat of the Houthi militias to the Yemeni people, as well as international shipping and neighboring countries, the OIC said. GCC Secretary General Naif Falah al-Hajraf expressed support for the UN's decision toward ending the Houthis' activities and the bloodshed of the Yemeni people. A UK secondary school religious studies teacher has sparked outrage among Muslims for using a picture of Osama bin Laden to depict the Prophet Muhammad. The teacher at the Church of England All Saints Academy in Dunstable near Luton has been suspended after 10th graders were shown the image during a PowerPoint presentation on Friday. After a concerned student alerted the academy to the picture's use, the school apologized and pledged to conduct an investigation. Many outraged Muslims who consider any depiction of the Prophet to be deeply offensive are accusing the school of Islamophobia. Akbar Dad Khan, a Muslim community leader in Luton, said putting the Prophet's name alongside an international terrorist is directly connecting Islam with terrorism. We're bringing more news stories after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid in Chicago. Just like you, I was moved by that Allahu Akbar lady. She stood her ground, fearful of none, for her hijab and for her education. Sisters and brothers, Indian Muslims are facing a genocide. India does not care for Muslim protesting, but it does care for the world opinion. Therefore, we must push the United Nations. The UN has a responsibility to protect. They must prevent genocide. Please sign this UN petition now. Get others to sign. It will help. Trust me, it will help. We need 1 million signatures, brothers and sisters. Please sign now.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban, or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime? And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
U.S. President Joe Biden announced a new COVID program during his State of the Union address on Tuesday. The Test to Treat initiative is a central component of the new strategy. Under the program, Biden said Americans could get tested for COVID-19 at a pharmacy and, if they are positive, receive antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. The pills made by Pfizer have been relatively scarce since the Food and Drug Administration approved them late last year. Biden said in his speech that Pfizer is working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. The nonprofit Tech Transparency Project discovered paramilitary groups were actively organizing support for convoys protesting COVID safety measures and other issues. That's even though some of those groups and individual members have been kicked off social media platforms following the January 6th insurrection, the Daily Beast reports. A rally on the Washington Monument grounds Tuesday to support trucker convoys fizzled out as it drew only 20 people. Several trucker convoys are still on their way to Washington, D.C. The U.S. House of Representatives passed legislation Monday making lynching a federal crime after more than 200 failed attempts by lawmakers to pass anti-lynching bills since 1900. Lawmakers approved the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act in a 422-3 vote. Republican Representatives Thomas Massie of Kentucky, Chip Roy of Texas, and Andrew Clyde of Georgia voted against the measure. Till was a 14-year-old black teenager from Chicago who was abducted, tortured, and shot in the head in 1955 after he allegedly whistled at a white woman in a Mississippi store. That woman, Carolyn Bryant Donham, later said she had lied about the incident that led to Till's lynching. The legislation was introduced by Congressman Bobby Rush, an Illinois Democrat. It establishes that a crime can be prosecuted as lynching when a conspiracy to commit a hate crime results in death or serious bodily injury. Perpetrators could face up to 30 years in prison. New polling data published Monday show that a majority of U.S. voters see corporate profiteering as a key driver of inflation. They also support a federal crackdown on companies unfairly pushing costs onto consumers. The survey conducted by Data for Progress found 63% of voters believe large corporations are taking advantage of the pandemic to raise prices unfairly on consumers and increase profits. Just 29% of voters believe that large corporations have no choice but to raise prices in response to rising costs, the poll found. Experts say a number of factors are to blame for price increases, including supply chain failures made worse by the COVID pandemic. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Welcome back. To discuss the consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Samana. Belarus has decided to host Russian nuclear bombs in its space, and Russia is now doing the nuclear exercise of its submarines. It has also threatened Finland and Sweden of consequences if they decide to join NATO. And the war is accelerating Ukraine, the guys. So we have someone who has dedicated good part of his life for nuclear disarmament. I would like to talk to him how he feels at this juncture in the history of nuclear disarmament. We have with us Jonathan GRANOFF. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Oh, alaikum assalam. God's peace be with you and all of our listeners and the whole world right now.
Thank you. Jonathan is president of Global Security Institute. You know, there are some nuclear scientists who maintain the doomsday clock. And they came up with the announcement a couple of months ago, I think, that it has never been this close to do the doomsday. How do you think clock should be moved right now?
That's a very dramatic question. The clock has obviously moved even closer to the great grave danger of the annihilation of civilization through the irresponsible threat and possible use of nuclear arms. The recent statements by President Putin, the threats that he's made, the overt threats that he's made, are an assault on the entire regime that uses the constraints of law and morality and reason and diplomacy and our human qualities to protect humanity. So it's extremely hazardous moment.
When do you think was the last time when any nuclear power conducted the exercises which Russia is conducting, or they do that all the time without announcing it?
Well, when they don't announce it, I wouldn't be able to tell. But the fact of the matter is that the nuclear weapons allegedly were taken off of targeting during of the major countries during the Clinton administration. But that's insignificant because in 30 seconds you can reprogram the computer targeting. The fact of the matter is that there are 9 nations with nuclear weapons. 95% of them are in the hands of Russia and the United States. The other states that have them are France, the United Kingdom, and China. Those countries, plus the United States and Russia, are parties to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which we'll talk about in a moment. Then there are 4 other countries that have them outside of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty regime. Those countries are North Korea, Israel, India, and Pakistan. Now, none of the countries other than Russia and the United States have arsenals in excess of a few hundred, whereas the United States and Russia have arsenals in excess of 5,000, both of us. So that's the lay of the land, and so the important players in setting the pace and setting the policies with respect to these devices are Russia and the United States. And neither of our countries has pledged never to use the weapons first. So holding out the doctrine of being able to use nuclear weapons first, in a sense, keeps them in a perpetual state of alertness, a perpetual state of threat, a perpetual state of hazard to the world. So whether we don't know exactly what Putin's statement means operationally, we don't know, but we do know this. We know that in 1995, when Boris Yeltsin was the head of Russia, there was a weather satellite launched off the coast of Norway. And the scientists in Norway alerted their Russian counterparts that they were going to send a weather satellite up to the North Pole. But the trajectory of the launch of the missile looked very much like a missile that was headed toward Moscow. And the first volley of a nuclear war would be a high altitude explosion exuding an electromagnetic pulse that would fry the computer systems and the command and control, the eyes and the ears of the leadership of Russia. And Boris Yeltsin had 8 minutes to decide what he would do. And the the steps that he took, that were taken by the military around him, led to almost just a few more steps and it would have been a launch. Now, in that crisis, wherein the information was not passed up the command and control to the head of Russia that this was a weather satellite, he could easily have ended civilization. But he said that he knew Bill Clinton would have no reason to do this. There was no crisis going on. There was no hostility taking place. My concern is that should a similar critical moment take place, given the situation we're in today, that sort of clear thinking, that reflective thought, that analytic thought, that human thought, that wisdom might not be forthcoming. And that's why we're in a tremendous hazard. It would be very good if the Security Council of the United Nations put forward a resolution stating that no nation shall use nuclear weapons first. That would still keep the deterrence factor, but it would lower the risk. But that's not happening. No one has put that forward in the Security Council.
Well, not using the nuclear weapon first, how will it be deterrent? I mean, if, I saw in a Council of Foreign Relations, there was a webinar about how nuclear power can still go in a conventional conflict. The thing is, that once it's a conventional aggression or conventional warfare, any party can decide any moment, now I don't have any conventional weapon left. And I'm going to use, say, quote unquote, limited nuclear warfare. So don't you think that doctrine of not using nuclear weapon first does not necessarily help in a strategic manner?
Well, if you're saying that if there was a legal restraint on the first use of a nuclear weapon, that if a country were to violate that legal constraint, then it would be meaningless. So you pose the proposition that such a pledge or such a legal restraint would be meaningless. Well, that's possible. If that's the position that we're in, then diplomacy itself as an institution is at risk, and that indeed is what Vladimir Putin has done to the world. But let me explain. If there was a no first use policy, at least in the United States, the intercontinental ballistic missiles in Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Montana would not have a purpose. Those are first strike weapons. Those are weapons that would receive a volley, the first volley in an exchange, because they're identifiable, they're stationary, and they're very lethal. So if you had a no first use policy, the actual deployments would change. The economics behind it would change. And if you change the economics, you change the political power, you change the voting, you change the influence of the nuclear venture. The nuclear venture doesn't take place in a vacuum. It takes place in a context in which countries believe that they need these. Russia and the United States believe sincerely that these weapons are needed to maintain the peace. And once the idea of no first use is that you would still have the deterrent, a retaliatory strike if someone were to strike you. So you would still have the deterrent. It doesn't necessarily undermine deterrence theory. But what's really, really behind all of this is the idea that we can put the entirety, any small group of people, men, right now, could put the entirety of the future of humanity at risk in the service of something that we humans have created, states. And that itself, in my opinion, is, to quote George Kennan, is an affront, a blasphemy, and a blasphemy, a denial of the sacred, a denial of our responsibility to future generations, and more importantly, a denial of respect of the power that gave us the intelligence to break the mystery of the atom, and use this insight of our intelligence to literally spend trillions of dollars to put the very future of the human race at risk. We don't have the right to do that. This is a moral imperative to work for the elimination of these devices. And what Russia has just done is made it much more difficult for us to engage in that task.
Jonathan, at this moment, one of the critical things which I see, no one is going to war with Russia other than the Ukrainian who have been invaded. Nobody is willing to provide them, say, no-fly zone or anything like that. So people are avoiding direct confrontation with the Russian aggression. So Ukrainians are on their own, essentially. But Europeans and Americans are providing arms, anti-tank weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, and things like that. So what I'm concerned about is that if strategy is the same as was vis-a-vis Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, that bleed Russians or bleed Soviets in the earlier case. In that case, there could be much more chaos. Can this conventional warfare, which is between Ukraine and Russia being the invader, can accelerate in which more risk of nuclear incident, accident, or actual nuclear aggression might take place?
You're absolutely correct. In the fog of war, as it's explained, many terrible things can happen. But let's not. You're offering a likelihood, a possibility, and it's speculative and it's terrible. But we have a situation right now to talk about the nuclear venture. There are 15 nuclear reactors in the Ukraine at 4 different sites, and those reactors depend very much on the electrical grid of the country that drives the hydraulic system, the water cooling system that cools these reactors so that they don't melt down like Chernobyl. And keeping these reactors safe and secure in the midst of war is a hazard that there's being inadequate attention paid to. And that danger is not just a danger to the people of the Ukraine, it's a danger to the entire world. I think, my brother, that one of the most important things that we've seen is an affirmation that wasn't expected of human solidarity the world over, and an affirmation of the importance of free societies, democracy, and a rejection of the invasion in violation of the UN Charter, in violation of human standards, rejection of the bombing of civilians, and outrage in the world in a way that we hadn't expected. And I think the human spirit, the spirit that God has given us for caring for one another, I made the peoples amongst you that you would come to know each other. And God is all aware and all knowing. That spirit that says that we can work together has awakened in an unprecedented way. And that's the solidarity that we have to show with the people of Ukraine and people of goodwill the world over.
Well, thank you so much, Jonathan GRANOFF. Jonathan is a friend and president of the Global Security Institute. Thank you so much, and assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Back to you, Samana.
Thank you, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.